While we're waiting, I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share. So I will wait a minute or so to start that. But before we do officially get started, just to make sure you're aware, we are recording this session. So if you don't want to be seen or heard, you should make sure that your camera is turned off and that you disable your microphone or mute yourself. If you have questions as we go, I'm perfectly happy for you to unmute yourself and interrupt me. That doesn't bother me at all. I'm perfectly happy to be interrupted and answer questions, or you can put questions in the chat. I will try to do a good job of monitoring the chat, and Adam Moore from our admissions office will be helping me out as well. Okay. Let's see, we've got one note in the chat. Let's see. Okay. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we have most people that have signed up. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome again. I'm Jody Hebmotsky. I'm the chair of Earth and Environmental Sciences at the University of Mary Washington. I think I'm in my 5th year as chair. Not really sure. I've been chair since 2016. I've been at Mary Washington a long time, so I have a lot of background with the institution. And what I thought I would do is share a PowerPoint presentation that gives a nice overview of some of our programs and the wonderful things that we're doing. And as I mentioned before, I'm very happy to be interrupted as we go with any sorts of questions. It doesn't bother me in the least. Or if you want to wait till the end or put messages in the chat, you can certainly do that too. So this is just an introductory slide to pique your interest. If you're concerned about Earth and its environments, if you want to help build a sustainable future, if you enjoy the outdoors, we might have a good program for you. And this just, the various images here show our students doing field work. This is one of our former graduates who's now an assistant professor. We can talk about some of this equipment if you wish. We do have a 22-foot center console research boat. This is my colleague, Ben Casella, out on the water with a student. The images at the bottom here are from my colleague, Pam Groth, taking students scuba diving and doing underwater coral restoration. And Mary Washington does have a lot of study abroad courses and programs. My department runs one to South Africa, the Florida Everglades. We've helped develop in the past a Galapagos course and so forth. And I boxed out the seal here since he's not quite so obvious. So this is just really to pique your interest in terms of field component and study abroad sites that we offer. I am the chair. Here is my contact. There's my name. Here's my email. It's just my first initial and then Heb, which is HAYOB at umw.edu. If you have follow-up questions and want to email me after this presentation, please feel free to do so. And this is the web address for our departmental website. EES is Earth and Environmental Science. If you email me and you don't want to write all this down, I can just reply to you, and you will see that in my email reply, I give the email address, and I also give our department's Facebook page name, so you can find that on Facebook if you wish. And these are just some photographs of some of our students conducting field work. In the upper right, this is one of our students, Rina Mirasaki, and here she is presenting her research results. The lady on the far left here is my colleague, Dr. Pam Groth. Rina is still with us. She has not yet graduated, but Cheyenne here on the far right is currently living in Port Angeles, Washington State, working in the environmental sector in that town. So our majors do a lot of different things. We have 4 majors and a minor. We have 2 separate tracks in environmental science, and we have 2 separate tracks in geology. And then we have an environmental sustainability minor. And on the environmental science side, I would say that any of our majors would prepare you well for conservation and wildlife management. Many of our students go into environmental consulting with either a private company or the government at different levels. So that could be local or regional or state or even federal, like the EPA, for example. Science education at the K through 12 level, museums, parks, nature centers, and so forth. Energy, mining, water resources, and so forth. Policy and advocacy, if people want to be a lobbyist, for example, our social track of our environmental science major might be quite good. And we have former graduates working with FEMA and the United States Geological Survey in their hazards program, doing mapping of things like landslides and flood zones and so forth. And this is Rina Mirasaki along with another student on our research boat collecting data for a research project. So we have 4 majors, like I said. We have a geology major, we have an environmental geology major, and the main difference is that the environmental geology major is really geared more towards the surface of the earth, whereas the geology major is a bit more comprehensive and would cover deep earth processes as well. And then we have 2 tracks in environmental science, a natural science track and a social science track. We don't have environmental studies. Both of these are science majors, and they have a pretty strong science base in both cases. It's just that the social track is more geared towards students that might want to work in policy and advocacy. And so the electives are a little bit different. And there's a slight difference of major requirements as well, which I would be happy to discuss. And then we have a minor in environmental sustainability, which is really geared towards any major. I would say it's one of the more popular minors on campus, and we currently have about 50 or 60 minors, some of which are majors in our programs as well, but not always. And these minors run the gamut from business majors to history majors, to English majors, to science majors. We have 9 faculty that are with us, mostly full-time. John Tippett is an adjunct faculty member. He has a master's from Duke University, which is a well-respected program. And he is the former director of the Friends of the Rappahannock River Advocacy Group, which is a regional organization. The rest of us, you can see our names here, where we got our degrees, what our specialty is. Most of us are geologists by training, but Tyler Frankel and Melanie Schlchesky are not. Melanie is a soil scientist and Tyler is an environmental toxicologist. So he has a background in biology and he looks at the effects of toxins and chemicals. One of his studies, for example, is on birth control chemicals and the effects on fish in the natural environment. So our 2 most recent hires just happen to be at the top alphabetically, Pam Groth, who is a paleoclimatologist, and Tyler Frankel, who's an environmental toxicologist. So I'm happy to answer questions about any of the faculty if you've got questions about them. I'm right here. I did my graduate work at Michigan. I'm a hard rock geologist by training. So I teach the mineralogy and hard rock petrology classes. We have quite a few lower level offerings in my department. These are by course number, and where you see the NS, that means that that course fulfills the natural science requirement at Mary Washington. Some of these other courses can fulfill an extra method of investigation, so they still sort of count for gen eds. They just don't completely fulfill the natural science. And we do have a digital intensive requirement, diverse and global perspectives, some honors and freshman seminars and so forth. So the point being here is just that we have a good array of lower level courses where you can double dip and not only satisfy the major, but also satisfy some general education requirements. And that really streamlines the process and helps move students through more quickly. And then we do have opportunities outside of the major for students to conduct undergraduate research at, say, the freshman or sophomore level, where you don't have to be a declared major. And if you just want to dabble a little bit in research and assist other students and faculty, you can kind of get your feet wet and just sign up for a credit or 2 under URES 197. We, of course, have upper level courses. The ones that have an asterisk next to them are 4-credit courses that have a lab. The WI courses are writing intensive, SI is speaking intensive. And then we have a series of experiences that satisfy what Mary Washington now calls the beyond the classroom general education requirement. So the things in blue here, the writing intensive, the speaking intensive, the beyond the classroom right here, these tend to be general education requirements. And again, the point is that we have a pretty good array of upper level courses. If you compared what we offer with most other institutions, I think we compare very well in terms of the breadth of courses that we offer. And we have quite a few opportunities for experiential learning types of experiences, such as research or internships or these 360 courses. These are my department's various study abroad courses, and you'll see some information, some pictures of various sites coming up in just a moment. Again, I'm happy. Let's see, we've got a question in the chat. So the question is, how does the environmental science degree overlap or combine with the conservation biology? That's a very good question, because I see a couple of you listed conservation biology as an interest. I would say this, they're both good programs. I can't speak ill of the biology program, they're quite good. The real question is, do you want to be pretty much solely a biologist by training? The conservation biology program is primarily a biology degree, and you do have to take genetics. Our environmental science natural track, which would be sort of the comparable thing that my department offers, I think is a broader training. We require students to take, for that major, hydrogeology, and we require soil science. And those courses really, I think, train you better to go out and work in environmental consulting. And this is my opinion. There are more job opportunities, broadly speaking, in environmental consulting than there are, for example, in wildlife management. I know a lot of people love wildlife and they want to protect and care for wildlife. It's a little bit more of a niche market. So I would personally argue that our major is a broader training that would prepare you better for a broader range of jobs. I'm sure the biologists would disagree and would argue that their major trains you just as well. So we just have to agree to disagree. But the real difference is that you can be an environmental science natural track major and choose most of your electives from biology. We have an extensive list of chemistry and biology courses that count as electives in the major. So you can do the base courses with us. And in fact, we require almost 2 full years of biology anyway to get a major in environmental science. And then you could do a lot of your electives in biology if you wished. Yeah. Let's see, there's another question in the chat. With those opportunities just mentioned, what is the percentage of environmental science graduates that immediately get jobs within the field? I don't have hard and fast numbers for you. I would say upwards of 1/3 of our students, maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of our students choose to go to graduate school right away. So that pulls them out of the job market. Of the students that look for employment right away, I think it's pretty successful. I'm sorry, I don't have actual numbers. I'm going to show you some success stories of our students. I would say between 50 and 75%, recognizing that with COVID, this past year or so has been very unusual and quite challenging for students to find in-person opportunities. I will say that I think Mary Washington is uniquely positioned geographically, especially for upper level students that have a car, because we are an hour's commute from Richmond, an hour's commute from Northern Virginia, a little more than an hour from Charlottesville, depending on which route you take, and commutable distance to Dahlgren as well. And therefore, our students have the opportunity to participate in internships that are local or regional. And the best way to get your foot in the door for a job is to do an internship. And you can get academic credit for it. You can not only satisfy the general education beyond the classroom requirement, but through $4.99 at the bottom of the page here, you can get up to 3 credits elective in the major by completing an internship. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Miriam is asking, do I have any information on the climate science minor, or is that more related to geography? It is a minor that is offered through the geography program. However, if you look at their listing of courses, you will see that our EESC 355 Icehouse Greenhouse Earth is one of the courses in that program. And it's a little bit odd. I'll just admit that geography kind of got the jump on us in terms of offering that minor. They submitted it, full disclosure, they submitted it to the curriculum committee before we really had a chance to do so. So it's a good minor. In terms of faculty that are trained in climatology, our Dr. Pam Groth is a paleoclimatologist by training. That is what her PhD is in. And that is not true of anybody in geography. Having said that, it's a very good minor. Many of our students major in environmental science or geology, one of our programs, and they do the climate science minor. It is a popular minor for our students. I should also point out that, let me go back a slide. Our 205 course right here, this GIS applications in environmental science and geology. Geography also offers a certificate in GIS, Geographic Information Systems. And if you're not familiar with that, it's essentially digital map making. Any data that has a spatial component can be displayed in GIS software. And so if you've ever gone to government websites and you've pulled up information about historic sites, Civil War sites, or other types of information, those databases, what you're seeing displayed on the computer, those are essentially GIS based. So I always tell students that GIS equals jobs, and probably close to a third of our students at any point in time are doing the certificate in GIS. Now, we do require all of our majors to take an entry-level GIS class, and our course is a gateway course to that certificate. And then geography has 2 courses that they offer. So students in the GIS certificate take one of the 3. They overlap too much. You can't take all 3. You take one of the 3, and then there are 4 other courses that one has to take to get the certificate in GIS. And I would say somewhere between 20 and 30% of our majors do that certificate because it's almost guaranteed that if you do that GIS certificate, that you will get a job in GIS when you graduate, at least if you want one. Now, some students decide they don't really want to sit behind a computer all day, but if GIS comes easily to you and you enjoy it, it's a great toolkit to have. And you'd be very hard pressed to find any job in environmental science or geology or geography, that doesn't require GIS skills. Even just by having a single course of GIS, we've had students get internships and jobs. So let me just pause there a moment and see if, based on anything that I've covered so far, if you guys have any other questions. Some good questions coming in. So I teach the mineralogy and petrology on this list. So beyond the classroom, Mary Washington has a requirement that all students have to fulfill a beyond the classroom experience. And one of the most common ways to do that is to complete an internship. Let's see, a couple questions just came in. Can I talk more about internships, especially in DC? Are there opportunities to go to academic conferences and present research? Yes and yes, absolutely. The students in my program that do research, and you're going to see some slides about this, I have some colleagues that are very active in research, and students write proposals to secure internal funding from Mary Washington. I've got some slides coming up about that. So actually, let me hold off on that. Stay tuned for that. With regard to internships, yes, these are the agencies with which some of our students have done internships in the private sector. And this is not all of them. This is just a subset. Froling and Robertson and Marstell Day are local or regional environmental consulting firms that are private. We've had students do internships with the city of Fredericksburg, the Virginia Game and Inland Fisheries, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Agriculture, EPA, the United States Geological Survey. If you didn't know, their national headquarters are just up the road in Reston, and the NRCS. The advocacy groups Greenpeace, and then Crow's Nest is a regional local group, as is Friends of the Rappahannock. So I would argue you actually don't have to go to DC to get a good internship. Many of these agencies are closer than DC. The state of Virginia, the Department of Environmental Quality is, we don't have an EPA at the state level. We have the U.S. Department of Environment, the Virginia DEQ. And their water resources division is in Woodbridge, and the air quality division is in Richmond. And we've had students do internships and get jobs with those agencies as well. So some of my more environmentally oriented colleagues, like Melanie Schlchesky, lives in DC. She has a lot of great contacts up there, and she's on listservs and often puts students in contact with some of these groups. Yeah, I hope I answered that question. If I didn't, let me know, and I'll be happy to try to say a little bit more. Now, doing an internship is not the only way to satisfy the beyond the classroom requirement. Students can do research as well, but you can take an internship or you can complete an internship and earn up to 3 credits in the major or minor in my department. So that's a pretty effective way of getting your foot in the door as far as a potential job, satisfying the beyond the classroom general education requirement, and getting elective credit in the major. In terms of study abroad, this is another great way to satisfy the beyond the classroom experience. Now, I will say it comes with an extra cost. These study abroad 360 type courses that my department offers, you don't pay extra for tuition because it's embedded within the regular academic year, but there are travel costs in terms of airfare and lodging and food. I don't have exact numbers, but it's somewhere between $3,500 and $5,000 for a 4-credit course to do the study abroad component. So this lady right here is Dr. Melanie Schlchesky. She is the one I mentioned that lives in DC. She is a soil scientist by training, but has a lot of background with NGOs and worked in the Peace Corps in Africa, in Cameroon. And she developed this 360C course, which is titled Sustainability Issues in South Africa. And this is her with a group of students from a couple of years ago at the Cape of Good Hope. So she runs this course about every other year, and students go to South Africa for 2 weeks over December. And then in the spring, you take the follow-up course. So it's a spring course. It's a 4-credit course. It's part of your normal spring load. There is an extra cost because of the field component, but then it's part of your 4-credit load in the spring. So again, you don't pay extra for tuition. It's just the airfare is expensive to get to Africa. Pam Groth, our second to most recent hire, who is the climatologist, has a PhD in climatology and a master's in structural geology, developed this course called UMW in Bonaire. And what you're seeing here are students becoming certified in underwater coral restoration techniques. So part of the component of this study abroad experience is that students become certified in scuba diving. And so here you can see them having fun and doing some lab work as well as underwater work. The average study abroad program, do you mean cost? I would say the average cost, it really depends on where you go. This one's a bit cheaper because it's not quite as expensive to get to Bonaire. But with the certification for the scuba diving and the coral restoration, I want to say it was about $3,800, but Pam would know for sure. So if you want to email me a follow-up, I can try to get more accurate figures. I don't think the South Africa was above 5,000. And then this course, the Bonaire, is also a spring course taught about every other year. And the field component is a little bit different. Students tend to go over the week of spring break. So it's just a week over spring break, and then it's a regular 4-credit spring course as well, where you do classroom readings and lectures and so forth as well, and projects on site at Mary Washington. This is a Florida Everglades class. This was actually the first one developed, which is why it has the A. This again is Melanie Schlchesky, and these are some students on site in Florida. So they're not always abroad, but could be more regional. Some of you have asked about research. This is my colleague, Ben Casella, who is Kenyan by birth, and he's got a really wide range of experiences. He's lived in Minnesota, he's lived in British Columbia, he's lived in South Carolina, he's lived in Texas. He's got a really long background. Well, I mean, he's not old, but he's got a really impressive background in terms of the various places where he's lived and worked. And this is Tyler Frankel, our newest hire, who is the ecotoxicologist, as I mentioned. And these were 3 of his students, 2 of whom have now graduated and gone on to graduate school, And then Katie is still a student. She's not yet graduated. Elise Clark here is probably one of our most impressive graduates. She graduated way back in 2013, which probably sounds ancient to you guys. That was 8 years ago, and she's now an assistant professor at Fitchburg State. Oh, the average length. Yes. So it depends what you mean by study abroad only being a couple of weeks long. My department does not offer any study abroad courses where the only thing you do is a week or two. For both South Africa and Bonaire, the abroad component or the field component offsite is either a week or 2 weeks, but those are regular 4-credit semester-long courses. Across campus, there are many other experiences, and some of those might be shorter term. And we also partner with many institutions. Krakow, Poland. Okay. Yes, if you go to, if we have time, I can screen share and show you the Mary Washington website where you can find this information. If you just go to umw.edu and you type in CIE, capital C, capital I, capital E, which is Center for International Education, you will get, you will access a page, a front page that will show you a map of all the places where we have partnership agreements, as well as direct study abroad programs run by UMW faculty. So you can search by region, you can search by courses, and that will take you to other pages. There's just a wealth of information on there. It's way too broad for any one person to know everything. But I'm confident that if you went there and you clicked on Poland, you would find some partnership institutions where you can go and take courses there and then be assured that they're going to transfer back to Mary Washington. This is just a very short list, a very selected list of undergraduate research. Every gold name that you see, Taylor Coxon, Matt Ricker, Lainey LeBlanc, Morris Slocum, who you saw a picture of previously. Ben was just in the previous slide with Tyler, as was Mary Hoffman. These are publications or research presentations that students have given at conferences and to journals. So this first one, this is a journal publication from 2016. And notice that Taylor is the first author. The Journal of Environmental Science and Pollution Research. Matt Ricker was a student. He graduated, oh gosh, at least a decade ago. He is now a professor at North Carolina State. And let's see. Yeah, there he is as well. Andrea Moore, who published this article with Dr. Groth, is now in graduate school in Florida. Let me see. Joe Antwi is a biology professor. So my colleagues collaborate with faculty from biology and chemistry. Lana Giancarlo is a professor of chemistry. So my colleague Ben has worked a lot with some of the chemists and as well as the biologists. And so the bottom line is that we tend to share resources in Jepson. And so the instrumentation that we have, students have access to and get to use. And Lauren Chartier here is actually a biology major, but Ben was her primary advisor, and she was the winner of the second best student presentation at this particular meeting. And she was competing against graduate students as well. They actually did not realize, I don't think, that she was an undergraduate. And the Geological Society of America is one of 2 premier geological organizations in North America. So this is a really big conference. This is, yeah, was that the annual meeting? Yeah, that was the national annual meeting where about 6,000 geoscientists are in attendance. And that was Lauren Chartier right there at the National GSA in Phoenix. And this was her publication. There's Mary Hoffman and Ben on the right, who are students of Dr. Frankel's. This is one of his main conferences. It's a toxicology conference. He goes to both the regional and the national meetings. They both just graduated a year ago. So we have a lot of funding and a lot of great facilities to support student research. Pre-COVID, last year was a little bit of an anomaly because of COVID, since we were largely virtual, but we normally fund about $160,000 just for undergraduate research. And this is not faculty research, this is undergraduate research where students write proposals, 2 to 3 page proposals under the guidance of their advisor to secure internal funding to do field work, get laboratory analyses processed. If we don't have the right kind of equipment, we send them off site, travel to conferences. It's very common for our students to go to conferences and they receive funding to go. The registration costs, hotel costs, airfare, and so forth. So usually students don't pay out of pocket at all, with the exception of maybe a little bit of food. We also have state-of-the-art labs. I realize some of these acronyms don't mean much to you guys, but this is an inductively coupled plasma atomic emission spectrometer. It's used to measure soil and water chemistry. We have a 22-foot center console boat, like I said. We have a scanning electron microscope, a variable pressure one, an atomic force microscope, a high-performance liquid chromatograph instrument, greenhouse, etc. So we have pretty much all of the equipment that one would expect to find at a larger R1 type of institution. The difference being that our students actually get access to it and get to use it. As long as they've been properly trained, they can in fact use it on their own without a faculty member even being present, depending on the instrument. And I don't think we'd let them drive the boat by themselves, but yeah. We also have a Summer Science Institute. It's a 10-week intensive summer research experience. Room and board are provided, as well as a $3,000 salary or stipend for the students to use however they wish. And the process consists of 10 teams, where each team is 1 faculty member and 2 students. And there are co-curricular fun activities like going to a baseball game or going canoeing and what have you. And then at the end of July, in late July, at the end of the 10-week double summer term, summer session 1 and 2, there is a symposium of a combination of both poster and oral presentations where students present their work. And this is the edition that was just completed. See, we moved in about a year ago. And my department, in terms of this edition, we have all of the lower level and pretty much all of the middle level, with the exception of a few classrooms. And this is one of the new classrooms before people moved in. So you can see the beautiful windows. It's pretty nice and bright and airy. It's not dark and dank in a basement somewhere. All right, let me just quickly talk about some success stories. These are graduate students from my department over a range of dates in majors, both geology and the environmental science side of things. Matt Ricker graduated with a geology degree in 2006. He is now an assistant professor at North Carolina State. So he went off and did a master's and PhD elsewhere. Grace Reel was also a geology major, and she is gainfully employed with a soil engineering firm in Washington, D.C. Katie Bennis was also a geology major, and she got her master's from UMKC in Missouri and is a volcanology researcher with the Smithsonian just an hour up the road in D.C. And then Emma Duncan was an environmental geology major, and she works, let me get my toolbar out of the way. She's also up in DC. Let me see if there's another question in the chat. So the question is, when are you able to sign up for the Summer Science Institute? Do you have to be an upperclassman? It's not so much signing up, it is a competitive process because the number of slots are so limited. So normally the most successful applicants are students that are rising juniors typically, or maybe rising seniors that have a high GPA, that are interested in doing research, and that in addition to the summer research, want to continue that research in the regular academic school year. It's not a requirement, but to entice the faculty member to want to take you on as a team member, that's the kind of student that's typically most successful. So Grace did summer science, I think Matt did it. So most students that really start to get into the research, well, let me show you Elise in the next slide, I think. Yeah, Elise here in the lower right, she was kind of exceptional. She was a double major in both environmental science and geology. And I think she did research for 3 years, all of her sophomore year, all of her junior year, and all of her senior year. That's a little unusual. You don't have to commit to that level because research is not for everybody. And that's why we have other opportunities for students to satisfy the beyond the classroom experience. Some students don't want to do research. They want to get a job. They want to do an internship, and that's perfectly fine too. But if you really want to do research, there are certainly opportunities to get your feet wet, starting off as a sophomore, for example, in the lab, kind of really prove yourself, and then you probably would become a very good candidate for the summer science program. So each department is guaranteed one team for summer science, which means there would always be an EESC faculty member that's eligible to have a team of 2 students. And then there are some competitive slots as well. So it's biology, chemistry, physics, my department, math, and computer science that are part of this summer science program. This is Maura Slocum, who is an environmental science natural track student. She's working on her PhD up at the University of Pennsylvania. David Demansky goes back a little further. He is gainfully employed in Alexandria. And Elise, who I already talked about, is at Fitchburg State. So just let me try to summarize here. Why Mary Washington? Well, as you might be aware, we don't have graduate programs in the sciences. The only graduate programs at Mary Washington are in education, business, and a master's in GIS. Therefore, undergraduates are really our focus. And the type of faculty that come to Mary Washington and stay at Mary Washington really enjoy working with undergraduates and really enjoy teaching. And so all of our classes and labs are taught by professors. We don't have teaching assistants. We do it all. We do all the grading, we do all the teaching. We have a lot of very research active faculty. So if you want to do research, you certainly can do that. We have fairly small classes. An average lower level section is 24 students, but at the upper level in my department, we tend to range from about 10 to 18 students, and sometimes there's 6 or 7. We have a lot of really high quality field experiences and study abroad opportunities. Students work really closely with faculty. You get to use all of our equipment. It's not hands off to look at only. And one of the institution-wide, I think one of the strongest selling points about Mary Washington is not only that we're reasonably priced, if one could say that about higher ed these days, but our location. We really are in, I think, one of the best locations in the state to allow students to pursue internships. There's a question about whether or not classes will be in person in the fall at Mary Washington. I think the answer is yes. The state of Virginia has prioritized vaccinating college students. Everybody I know has been vaccinated. I can tell you from talking to most of my students, they've been vaccinated because they tell me I'm going to be late to class, I'm getting my vaccine. And we are fully planning for things being back to normal in the fall. Now we might still be masking. We don't know about that. We might still be trying to distance a little bit, but we are planning for full capacity in the classes and labs for the fall. That is the expectation. Yeah. This is my colleague, Chuck Whipke, who unfortunately is retiring this May, and he is packing Ben up in a box to send her off to graduate school. And I think that's the last slide. That is the last slide. So let me stop sharing and come back so I can see, well, I can't see you all because your cameras are off, but you can see me and just see it is trying to read my clock here, 5:37. I think we have about 10 minutes left. I'm very happy to answer any other questions. I'm happy to screen share and try to show you where you can find some of this information on the UMW website. This is your time, so really whatever you wish. Parents, if you're present, you're welcome to ask questions too. I know parents try to stay out of it, but I'm happy to talk to parents as well. No questions? Well, thank you all for attending. Let's see, is it easy to study abroad into a course schedule? Are any of the 4 majors math heavy? We have no formal math requirement for any of our majors, nothing. There are general education quantitative reasoning requirements. All students have to take 1 quantitative reasoning course. Having said that, if you want to be competitive for graduate school and you plan to go to graduate school, depending on what area of interest you have, we would probably recommend a year of calculus, and maybe even physics. I mean, when I was a geology major at Madison, Wisconsin for my undergraduate, I had to do a year of chemistry, a year of calculus, and a year of calculus-based physics. We don't require that. We do require a year of chemistry for all of our majors in my department. And in fact, the environmental science majors, both of them require a year and a half of chemistry. But that extra 3rd semester, we have a course that we teach called Environmental Geochemistry that my colleague Melanie Schlchesky teaches. and most of our majors prefer to take her course. We don't have any formal math requirement whatsoever. I would say there was a question about, is it easy to work a study abroad into a course schedule? Yes, because the field component is either 2 weeks in December or it's the week of spring break. So as long as you're willing to travel to South Africa in December or give up your spring break, yes, it's very doable. The rest of the course is like a regular class during the spring term. It has a regular meeting time. There might be papers or projects or class discussions that's just done in a regular meeting period for a normal class. It's sort of like 3 hours a week. And then the field component is that extra credit that normally would be a lab for a 4-credit course. Yeah. So it's less work on site than a 4-credit lab-based course because you've already done that field component, or you will have already done it over spring break, if that makes sense. Yeah. You guys have some good questions. Let's see, any others? Trying to see if I missed anything. Let's see, one more. Oh, thank you. You're very welcome. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me by email. I check email every day. I'm pretty good with email. I'm pretty fast. I can send you a copy of this presentation if you wish. It's about 20 megabytes, but it will eventually go through usually. And I can also send you some handouts for new students, what we recommend that new students consider taking right when they get here, or maybe if they're going to go to community college first, what they might want to take for our different majors. So I have like a new student handout for geology. I have one for environmental science. I have a handout about the environmental sustainability minor. Like I said, I have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation if you want a copy of it, so you can look at the faculty, look up their publications, etc. I'd be very happy to send that out. How does it work if you don't declare a major until your sophomore year? So in fact, you cannot declare a major until you have 28 credits at Mary Washington. This is true at most institutions. You have to have a certain number of credits before you're actually allowed to declare. Nonetheless, if you have a pretty good idea what you want to do, you can be taking the necessary courses and be on track so that when you go to declare that major, you're certainly on track. And so this is always the case when students are coming into Mary Washington and they know that they want to be an environmental science major. Yeah, please email me, Noah, if you want to have those handouts. Anybody that wants the handouts, just email me and I will send you stuff back. So if you want to be an environmental science major, I would tell you to take our 110 class in the fall, along with biology 121, and then to take biology 132 in the spring and our environmental science 120 in the spring. That's the first year, what we really want to see students complete, as well as doing a chemistry placement test. If you want to be a geology major, it's the year of introductory environmental science is not part of that program, nor is any biology. That's one of the major differences between the geology and environmental science programs. I would recommend that you take our 111 course, which is physical geology, but we call it our dynamic earth. So there are some clear differences. Now, it doesn't mean you can't switch over or double major, but if you're pretty clear cut on what you want to do, it's pretty easy to map it out. It's, if you're a junior and then you decide you want to be an environmental science major, that's a little bit trickier because the science majors tend to be a little more vertically building and it takes more careful sequencing. But yeah, I can certainly, if you email me, if you've got questions about courses to take, either at community college or maybe you're a junior in high school and you're wanting to know what to take next year in your senior year or something, I can certainly make some recommendations. I think we have 5 minutes left. If anyone has any other questions, again, I'm happy to answer them. Or you're welcome to log off if you're good and you need to get going. You want to go get some dinner. And please don't hesitate to email me if you want the handouts or you want a copy of this presentation, or if you have other questions, or if you want to know who the biology chair is or who the chemistry chair is, I can put you in touch with them as well. They're very nice people. They'd be happy to help you. Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to chat with you all, even virtually. I'll still hang on in case anybody has questions that they didn't want to raise in front of the group.
I actually did have a question. Hi,
Sure.
I'm Miriam. I'm from Northern Virginia. I am committed to Mary Washington,
Yeah.
and I have some questions about the special major program. Do you have any information on that, or is that more of a question for the admissions counselors, or like someone else?
So students can create a special major. I wouldn't say it's a super common thing to do, but students can create a special major and they have to submit it to the curriculum committee, the university curriculum committee, to get it approved. So for example, I know we've had students do a special major like in Italian studies where we don't have an Italian major. And so they took, they got a coherent set of courses approved. And we do have a professor who teaches Italian. So that professor worked with the student to come up with the list of courses. And then it was approved by the curriculum committee. So it's really more at the university level, getting a particular slate of courses that appear to be related and kind of coherent approved, if that makes sense. So if you have an interest in what you're thinking of, I can maybe make some recommendations, but.
I'm really interested in meteorology.
Okay.
I haven't seen any record of anyone making a special major for meteorology before.
That's a slightly tricky one. And I will say the reason I think is because to be a meteorologist, really like the people you see on TV that are actually meteorologists by training is a whole lot of physics and math and atmospheric science. And that's not really an undergraduate topic. So you're not the first person to ask about meteorology. Yeah, it's such a broad field. It really kind of depends on what your interests are, but I could see one going into atmospheric science. Often that's taught through an engineering program, like where I did my graduate work at Michigan. That was a whole separate engineering campus. That's where they had their atmospheric stuff. Yeah, I would maybe, it's going to be some physics, it's going to be some math, it's going to be like the weather and climate class taught through geography. Oceanography taught through my program. I would highly recommend that you reach out to Janet Asper, who is the chair of both chemistry and physics. She oversees both programs, and the chair of geography, who is Jackie Gallagher. And if you want to email me, I can send you their names, but that is a tricky one, and I understand. We've had a few students inquire about meteorology, and that's not an easy fit at the undergraduate level. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Anywhere that doesn't have like a meteorology program to start with isn't like, and not that they're not equipped to do it. It's just there's a lot of hoops to jump through.
Well, and the truth too is that to get into true meteorology requires such a background in some of these other concepts, physics and climate, weather and climate and so forth, that, yeah, I would maybe email Jackie Gallagher and Janet Asper. You can copy me too if you wish, and we could maybe kind of brainstorm and think about what slate of courses would be most suitable for that kind of a special major.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Miriam. Pleasure to meet you. And don't hesitate to follow up, by email. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
oh, you're very welcome. Have a good evening.
Thank you too.